Hello again and thanks for joining. So I've got something a little bit unusual to have a look at today. These models are from Bachmann in their classic collector series, and what we have here is the Prussian steam locomotive along with a matching coach to go with it. So the locomotive is number 410501 and the coach is 431046. So this locomotive represents one of a series of locomotives which are actually made in America, and they were shipped to Germany around about 1839 to 1841, and they ran from Berlin to Potsdam. That's currently being run by the German S-Bahn, but this steam locomotive and these carriages used to run that line back in the day. So Bachmann have produced this special collector series, and we're going to have a look at it today, and we're going to start off having a look at the locomotive. Before we open up the box, just on the back here we have details from Bachmann of some other locomotives that you can get in the series. The John Bull, the DeWitt Clinton I think it is, and the Orient Express down here. So these are different locomotive packs that you can get on this series. So there's lots of interesting trains that you could collect in this range. Anyway, let's get this box open. Okay, so the steam train is very delicate. When I took it out there, I was very cautious about breaking it, and it's very light as well and seems quite flimsy. So obviously this is something you're going to have to be very careful if you're handling. Let's get the coach out as well. So here's the items out of the boxes, and already they really appeal. What an interesting locomotive this is, and also the carriage as well is really cool looking. Very noticeable though is that we don't have a driver or fireman on board, and there's no hiding it inside enclosed cab on this one. So that's a first stop if you're thinking about buying this model and you want to run it, is that it looks so much better if it had a crew. Anyway, let's start off by having a look at the locomotive a bit closer. So this seems to be permanently coupled to the tender, and is a very delicate small drawbar there which is screwed onto both items. So you're going to have to be extremely careful with these two items if you're picking them up. At this end of the locomotive there's this really characterful long gold chimney here. This is actually made of metal, and it's an extra part that's been added on, as has this part here and these parts back here. So that's really nice that they've added those on in metal, and it's a really nice finish that they've got on there, this gold colour. At the front of the boiler is a nice ring of rivets there, some nice detail, and this characterful front buffer beam with these buffers here which are part of the red moulding, but they've got these gold parts added around which also look as though they've been turned pieces of metal. There is a bit of a painting issue here because some of the red paint has got on the front of this coupling here, and when we've got these little parts hanging down here which are made of plastic so they could easily break, you're going to have to be very cautious when handling this. So looking down the side of this locomotive, it's not a very long boiler at all. But what is really good is the painting on this. These little red and green parts here have been painted really nicely, and they have these really shiny gold bands going around the boiler there. The valve gear is very delicate as well, and also made in metal, and it has this extra piece here just at the side of the boiler. And here on the footplate there is these railings at the side which are made of plastic, but you wouldn't think it, you would think they were made of metal. I'm still actually not 100% sure whether they are metal or plastic. And then this part here in black is definitely plastic with some ribs molded around it. There's some details there on the footplate, and we've got two blobs of glue there which maybe indicates that possibly this had figures in the past that have broken off. Around this side we have this extra silver piece added in here which I think is a brake lever, and underneath you can see these parts here which are made of plastic which have been added in as well as these little steps here. So plenty of opportunity to break parts off this locomotive. The underframe detail is quite impressive as well, with these parts here which have been screwed on here, and it looks as though pickup comes from these front bogies here, and it's driven this back driving wheel here just with one gear there. Really nice wheels as well, and also a very delicate tender. This part here is made of plastic and it's been chromed, and it links up with the brake gear underneath here which is in line with the wheels, which is fantastic. These wheels are very free running as well, and this tender is a two-part moulding with the chassis and the body. A really quite poor representation of coal there, it's been added in. And also here just you can see two blobs of glue as well, so I think that actually might be from the factory to hold this together. And the back of the tender doesn't have any detail on it whatsoever, and the buffer beam also has a moulding mark going across it here, and these very lackluster buffers here as well, which are just plastic molded to the main piece of chassis. So let's have a look at the coach. So one thing straight away noticeable about this is it is extremely light, and it is a very small coach as well. The glazing isn't flush fit. You can see the side of the window frames there are green, which is the body colour, and they have been painted yellow on the outside but not the inside of the frame. So I think that's obviously a limitation of manufacturer there, which has resulted in not a very pleasing look to the side of the windows. And then we have this brown part here which has these printed numbers, second class here, first in the middle, and then second over here. And that's been done okay, I guess, but there is a bit of blurriness between the brown and the yellow, and also the yellow isn't so good. For example, at the top here, it is a bit sloppy up there, and is also here where the door frame is, you can see some of the green coming through as well. So the painting on this isn't that great really. The roof is an extra part that's been added on in this brown, and it has these two yellow, I guess they're air vents on the top, which have been picked out with yellow paint, and that's been done not too bad at all. At the end of the coaches, we just got a couple of ribs coming down. The buffer beam is very similar to the back of the tender, and it has this little tiny drawbar as well. So these are specific couplings to this model set. Very delicate as well, so you're going to have to be quite careful with those. On this part here, we've got some steps coming down, which got the edges picked out in green, which is quite nice. Very simple axle boxes and springs here, and the wheels are very nice, very chrome though, but free rolling. So let's give this a bit of a run and see how they go. So here they are on the test track. Let's give it some power and see what happens. So I'm actually quite surprised at just how good this little locomotive runs. It's got some obvious issues though, that it just stutters along a little bit. I think it's because of the mechanism and the size of the motor, and also because it only drives one wheel, it suffers from terrible wheel spin as well if you give it too much power straight away. But it did start straight away and it went along really well as well, and it can even go at quite a small speed as well. So quite a surprising little performer, this one. Let's see how much it weighs. So the locomotive comes in at just 65 grams, and the little coach is just 20 grams. So the Prussian from Bachmann in its classic collector series, what a characterful locomotive this is. I'm quite surprised they managed to get the engineering to get this as a working model. It just looks as though it doesn't have enough space to have a motor inside that and all the electrics that it needs in order to be able to run, and yet it does. It's quite surprising, and it can also pull this coach along as well. So I said that this coach is 20 grams, and that's quite light, but it's obvious that this locomotive doesn't have a lot of traction or pulling power, so you're going to have light coaches behind it. I don't know how many this could take, possibly 3 or 4, and that's probably it. But that's probably prototypical. There are things that are really great on this model. Obviously, the character of the locomotive is quite special, and it will be something really eye-catching on your layout. But there are some limitations here. The quality isn't so good, especially on the coach around about the windows and the printing on it. The pulling ability of this locomotive will be troublesome, I think, and if you don't have good track, I think it might get stuck on points and things like that. And the glue on the tender is a bit of a quality issue as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. However, this does really appeal because it's such a unique locomotive to get, and it's something wildly different from the run-of-the-norm locomotives and carriages that you get on model railways. So if you see this up for sale and you like interesting and unique models, then I think this is something definitely to have a look at. Let me know what you thought about my analysis of this model in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think about this. And also, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See ya.